Hello, everybody. This is Rick from the TaxDome team, and as always, I will guide you through today's topic. First, I would just like to thank you all for joining me today for yet another webinar. Today's session is all about organizers. Now, some of you might know them traditionally as questionnaires if you are new to TaxDome. To set some expectations right away, we're going to focus just on the organizers today. So we won't spend time talking about other topics throughout this webinar today. Now, one more thing before we get started. Our support team is available to answer any questions you may have throughout today's webinar. So make sure to type your questions into the Q&A section on the right, and they will be sure to help you out. Okay, so let's take a look at our agenda for today. We are going to start with an explanation of what our organizers are and what they will do. We'll then show you how they look and work from a client's point of view, just so you can immediately see the value in using them. Now, once we're done with that, we will switch over to the firm portal and show you where you can find pre-made, ready-to-use templates and where you can make your own templates if you'd like. After this, we will go over the building process step by step and explain why you would use the different question types and functions. Following that, we'll take some time to fully clear up how our conditional logic works, since I'm sure that most of you will be interested in that. We will then show you how to send organizers once you have your templates ready to go. And finally, we will wrap things up by showing you a couple of things that you can do after you have sent the organizers out. You'll be able to follow along quite easily today, since our goal is to teach you how to build one instead of fully building one today. Depending on the service, they might have over 100 questions, and yours might be different in terms of structure. So our top priority is teaching you how you can build it on your own. We'll also take a couple of short breaks throughout the day here, and we will put up small recaps of the most important points. Before we switch screens to the portal, let's first go over what organizers are. Organizers are TaxDome's built-in questionnaire forms through which you will collect all the client information you need, including documents. You can use them at the start of your services to get some basic information, maybe later on when you require some files from the clients, or you can use them to help you figure out how you'll continue working with that client altogether. Organizers are completely customizable, and the ones you'll be sending out are most likely going to be completely unique to you unless you find that an existing template has already covered everything that you need, in which case you could simply use those. There are different question types you can add to your organizers, ranging from free entry questions to dates and checkboxes. We'll go over the full list of those a little bit later, but besides this, you can also organize your questions into different sections, and you can have your questions and sections appear only if they're necessary for your clients, thanks to our conditional logic. The main difference between your regular questionnaires, which you might have been using up until now, and TaxDomes is not just the fact that they come with a bunch of useful extra functions, but they're also fully integrated with your portal, and more important, the workflow. You will be able to automatically send them out through your pipeline's automations, and the organizer will help your jobs move forward upon completion in return. So regardless of whether it's a prospect organizer or a yearly tax return organizer, they are the best tool to use to collect all the information that you need. Now, we know everybody loves a feature that has a ton of functionality, but if it ends up being complicated for the client, well, the chances are they're not going to use it anyway. So you will be happy to hear that their experience is very streamlined. So now that you have a basic understanding of what they are and what they're for, I'm going to show you how they look and work from the client's perspective. So right now, let me switch over to the client portal. Okay, here we go. Now, in this case, I already sent an organizer to a client, which we can use as an example here today. You can see how it shows up in their waiting for action list on the home page. At this point, the client would see it and simply click on the notification to open it up and get started. They will be redirected to a new page to help them focus just on this. They will start answering the questions you prepared one by one, but to avoid overwhelming them with too much information all at once, they'll only see one section at a time. Once they complete it, then they use the next button that you see to move on to the next section. Or if they want to skip ahead a little bit, well, they can also use the section menu in the top left corner. It's also a relief that they don't need to worry about losing their progress thanks to the automatic answer saving. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom of the section, there's a small message which lets them know that everything they do is saved, which means if it's a longer organizer and they need to continue answering a little bit later on, or maybe they need to back out to download some files that you asked them for in another different section, they will be able to pick up right where they left off. You can also save it manually if you prefer doing that. Just click on the three dots up here in the top right corner, and you will see the Save as Draft option. Now, things only get better from here on out. I'll open up a different client's organizer here just to show you some extra functions which do become available after your client has already completed their organizers. First, if you're sending them the same or an updated organizer once again, your clients will have the option to automatically fill in the information based on their answers in the previous organizer. Now, we often hear firms asking us if their clients can carry over information from one previous year of, let's say, tax organizers. And thanks to this feature, yes, they absolutely can. Additionally, they can compare their answers to those from different organizers they filled out by using this button right here, and then selecting the one that they are looking for. So as you can see, your clients will have a very easy time with these organizers. They'll enter the information you need, upload any required documents, and keep clicking on Next until they wrap everything up. Then in the future, when you need to work with them again, they will have shortcuts to avoid entering all the same information over and over and over again from different organizers multiple times over. The only thing we haven't touched on here is the conditional logic, but we are going to revisit that a little bit later on once we start talking about setting everything up. But for now, let's switch to the firm portal, and we're going to take a look at where you will find your own templates and pre-made organizer templates. Since we are in the firm portal right now, which I assume all of you watching have access to, you can start following along from this point forward if you wish. First, you will want to open up the templates section here in the left sidebar menu. It will expand, and the first page you'll see is the marketplace. You can see and get the templates that we've made available for you here, as well as ones that were uploaded by other firms. You'll see that right here as well. Now, if you go to the Organizers tab up here, you will see just those. Now, I would recommend getting the first one since I will do the same. You can also check out the others a little later on if you wanted to do that. Now, to find your own templates, you'll need to go to the Firm Templates page and once again, head to the Organizers tab. You'll be able to create new templates from scratch or edit your existing ones, but also copy other free templates from our library by using this button right here. Now, I mentioned earlier that some templates might already suit your needs and can be sent to clients straight away, but I would still suggest checking them out and adding or removing anything that you might like based on your particular preferences. I'm going to open up the template I got a few moments ago, and now we are ready to talk about the actual building and editing steps. However, we've talked about a lot here, so let's take a short break so you can get a chance to open things up as well, and you can follow along. And you can also use this little break here to send us your questions in the Q&A. Remember, our team is out there ready to help you out with any questions. So get those questions in there. Our team will answer those, and I will be back with you in just a moment, and we will continue. Okay, everybody, I think that's a long enough break for right now. Hopefully you got your questions into the Q&A and everybody is ready to get back to work. So it is time to talk about building and editing your organizers. So let's first go over the layout of the page. On the left, you'll see all the sections in this organizer and an option to create new ones if necessary. You'll always have to select the one that you want to make changes to, which will be done here on the right, where you will see all the current questions. You just need to click on any question or field to start editing it. And if you want to add new ones, well, scroll down to the bottom of this section. There you will see an option to add questions and text blocks. First, let me explain the latter. Text blocks are simple fields where you can enter any information you think would be helpful to your clients. There's one here at the top of this first section, which serves as a small introduction to organizers in general. Now, you can use yours for a similar purpose or in the middle of your organizers to provide some more context or maybe some details that will help your clients out. You can also add links to them if necessary. But now back to the questions here. If I click on the question button, a new menu will appear where I will have to select which question type I want to add. I would recommend playing around with all of these just to get a feel for how they work. Most of them should be straightforward enough not to need too much explanation here. So we're not going to spend too much time on all of these. But the consistent thing among all of them is that you need to enter what it's for. It's what your clients will see first and then the fields underneath. Free entry questions let your clients enter their information without restrictions. This means you can use them for anything ranging from their names to some specific information like a property address as an example. Email questions will check to confirm if the email address is written correctly, or in other words, whether it has the correct email structure. Number questions will only let your clients use numbers. You'll want to use this for anything related to income, expenses, prices, and similar things. Okay, so far so good. Those are all quite simple. The remaining question types won't require any typing from your clients at all. Date questions will require your clients to simply select a date from a small calendar that pops up. Thanks to this, you'll have consistent looking dates among your clients. Then we have radio buttons. They are multiple choice answers where your client can select only one answer. And checkbox questions are the same, but your clients can select multiple answers instead of just one. Next, we have the drop-down questions, which will let you prepare a list of answers, and then your client will select one. Or if you enable this toggle, multiple options from a drop-down menu. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what a drop-down menu is, think back to the last time you had to select your country or your state of residence. You likely clicked on a button, saw a long list of options for you to choose from. That's what this is. Yes or no questions are functionally the same as radio buttons, but they save you a little bit of time since you won't need to create these answers. It's simply yes or no. And finally, The file upload question type will add a button for your clients to upload the files that you are asking for. Now, thanks to this, you can collect both information and files all at once. The uploaded files will automatically be saved in the client uploaded documents folder, but you'll also be able to access them from the organizer. You're likely going to use all of these at some point, so make sure to try them out, experiment a little bit with them, and get used to them. You can also use the preview mode button at the top of the page to see how it would work for your clients. And that's the easiest way to make sure everything works, since it will react exactly the way it would in a real scenario. Now, these question types will cover pretty much everything that you can need for a questionnaire. However, there still are more functions beyond the question types that we haven't talked about yet. Now, if you take a look at the right side of the screen, you will notice how each question has a gear icon next to it. If you click on that, a new menu will slide out from the right with several options for you. They allow you to make extra adjustments on a per question basis. And we're going to start with the first and most basic one, the required toggle. If you enable this, your clients will not be able to submit the organizer until they fill it out. So it's just required for them to be able to continue. So if you cannot start or continue your work without some crucial information, make sure to enable the required toggle. This way, once you receive the notification that your client submitted the organizer, you will know that you have everything you need to get started doing your work. Next up, there's the Allow Pre-fill option. Now, we talked earlier about how your clients will be able to carry over their answers from one organizer to another. This is extremely useful, but we expanded the functionality of it for you. Instead of copying over everything, you can decide which questions you want to be pre-fillable and which ones you want the client to enter again. Basic information like their name, date of birth, and how many other things that you might have on there that won't change from year to year since the last time they fill it out, you can leave that. However, many questions will not be relevant anymore since they were only applicable for a previous time period, or you expect them to have changed in the meantime. If you disable the Allow Pre-fill option for those types of questions, then your client won't have to spend time looking through their previous answers to make corrections, but instead they can just focus on filling out the empty fields. We will talk more about the conditions here in a little bit once we clear everything else up. But so for now, we're going to skip ahead to the Update Account Tags toggle. This option and the conditions will only be available for question types where the client has to select an answer instead of entering it manually. So if you aren't seeing it on your end, that's why. This means only radio buttons, checkboxes, and drop-down question types support these two functions. As for the Update Account Tags, it automatically applies or removes tags for clients depending on their answers. You'll see all the possible answers here and two fields for each one where you can choose what happens, meaning whether a tag will be applied or it will be removed. Now imagine yourself working with some of your prospects. You send them a basic introductory organizer to collect some of their information and also to figure out what kind of service they might require. If you use this function to automatically apply tags, you'll be able to filter all your prospects who gave selected specific options. For example, let's say you let the prospect pick between tax preparation and bookkeeping. Well, depending on their answer, they'll get a tag and you'll instantly know what you're supposed to do with them. Now, this isn't limited to something like prospects either. If you attended our workflow webinar, you'll know you can have automation triggers for clients depending on the tags that they have. So let's use bookkeeping as an example. If you use QuickBooks, You'll have clients for which you have access to all their information, but you'll also have clients who will be sending you their bookkeeping files and details manually. If they confirmed which way they'll be working with you in an organizer and had a tag applied to them, you could have specific automations like tasks and messages be created for the correct client types. You could still achieve the same result by manually tagging your clients with the correct tags. But if you have hundreds or thousands of clients, I am sure that you would rather let TaxDome do it for you automatically, right? Just makes life a lot easier for you. The next function I want to talk about is the ability for clients to repeat sections. Now I'll back out of this menu and then click on the gear icon at the top of the section and not next to any questions. You will have fewer options in this menu, but this is where you will find the repeat toggle. In TaxDome, repeating a section refers to clients creating multiple blank copies of sections where they can fill them out. One of the most common examples of this is for dependents. Some of your clients might not have any, while others might have a bunch. In order to avoid bloating your organizer with possibly unnecessary sections, you would just create one section with the questions about the dependent or whatever else it is you need, and then enable this repeat option. I'll name the button here in this field, and I will then go to the preview mode again. First, I'll find this section I just edited and then scroll down to the bottom. I'll see a button which I can use to create a duplicate section. Your clients can use the button as many times as they need, and that way get all their information into the organizer, all without you causing an inconvenience for the clients who don't need all of these extra sections. Now, the last function I want to talk about as part of the organizer setup is the conditional logic you can have within your organizer. However, I believe it is a good time to take another break. We did cover quite a bit here. I will put up a slide with a small recap of what we had just talked about here, and you can make sure to get your questions into the Q&A so our teams can clear up any questions that you might have. So I'm going to leave that up here, and we will pause just for a bit, and I will see you in just a moment. Okay, everybody, we can jump back into it. Hopefully you've all had enough time to write your questions in the Q&A. If not, just keep sending them in. So now let's pick up where we left off, and we are going to talk about the conditional logic in our organizers. The way this works is that when you go into the settings of a question or a section, you enable the conditions toggle. But what you'll have to do next might not be clear at first glance. So let me clear it all up for you. There are two parts to every condition you want to set up: the actual condition and the questions and sections it affects. I brought up earlier how enabling conditions only works with question types where the client selects specific answers instead of entering their own. This is because you want other questions to appear based on certain answers. The most common example of conditional logic in an organizer you'll see is having a yes or no question asking the client something like, for example, are you married? You would have all the spouse-related questions listed either way, but you'll set it up so your client will only see those questions if they select yes. Setting this up will help you streamline the process for your clients, since they'll get asked just the questions which are relevant to them. So how do you set it all up? First, Create all the sections and questions you need because you cannot enable conditions for something that doesn't exist yet, of course. So if you're using this same template that I am, you'll already have a section here that's set up correctly. Great. You can use this as a reference if you ever find yourself struggling with it. You can always go back to it. Now, for testing purposes, you can create a new section for now and add 2 questions. Make the first one either a radio button, checkbox, drop down, or a yes or no question. After you enter its details and then create the second question, which can be any type, just go ahead and do that. Now, once you have both the initial question and the follow-up question written, you will go to the follow-up question and click on the gear icon and enable the condition toggle. A couple new fields appear when you do this. First, select the previous question in this field. That's how you will control which question can cause another one to appear. Then, select one of the possible answers from the previous question as the trigger. At this point, and for this basic example, you are done. There's nothing else that needs to be done here. So save this and go to the preview mode just to test it out. Go to the correct section and you'll see just one question appearing here. Now, if you select the correct answer, then magically the other question should appear as well. If you change the answer to the other one, well, guess what? It's going to disappear on you. And it works the same way if you set the condition for a new section to appear instead of just a question. So entire sections can appear with the proper answer. Now let's go back to the settings so I can show you how to control this even further. Back in this menu, you'll see that there's this add button right here. If you click it, you will be able to set up multiple conditions. Now, there are 2 reasons why you can do this. One is there should be multiple prerequisite conditions, or in other words, if you want your clients to answer these several questions in a specific order in order to have this one appear. The other reason is if you want this question to appear if they answer any of these questions correctly instead of all of them. You would just need to change the mode from all to any in this menu here and then set up the different possible triggers. You'll also notice in your settings how questions which have conditions enabled will have this little green dot on the gear icon and a conditions label in order to make it easier for you to find all the questions with conditions just in case you need to go back and make adjustments. You'll also see an impact label next to the questions, which serve as triggers for your conditional questions. You can hover over these labels to see more information about which other questions they are connected to. Now, just keep one thing in mind here. If you want to enable conditions, you have to do it one by one for your questions. So if there are several questions which would be triggered to appear based on the same answer, it would be more time efficient for you to make a new section with all those questions and then enable conditions for that entire section instead of individually for each one of the questions. Now, the last thing in regards to conditional automations I want to mention is how it will work when paired with the required toggle. If a question is both required and conditional, you won't have to worry about your clients being unable to submit the organizers because one of the questions they can't see is required. Conditional questions will only count as required if they become visible for the client. If they do not appear, well, it doesn't matter to them and it's not required. These are pretty much all the important things you needed to know about setting up your organizers. The only things left at this point is to name your organizers here at the top and also customize the remaining settings here next to the preview button. These are personal preferences, so you can leave them as you want. Once you play around with the organizer templates just a little bit more, you will see how easy it is to set them up. So don't worry if you feel like you might not remember everything that I just talked about here. It was a lot of information, but it is quite easy. The process actually boils down to making your sections, adding questions to them, and making some modifications to a couple of the questions whenever necessary. Nothing too intimidating here. So now that we are done talking about the setup, let's go over how you would send the organizers themselves. We'll keep this part very brief since the steps aren't particularly different from sending any other type of element that's in TaxDome. We're going to start by using the New button at the top of the page, selecting Organizer in the menu that appears, and then we will select the client we want to send it to. At this point, you just need to pick the template, choose if you want to enable reminders, and link the organizer to a job if you would like. Additionally, if you don't want to use the organizer name you set up in the template, well, guess what? You can still change it here before you send it out. So you can give it a unique name if you want. Now, if you need to send it out to multiple clients, well, then head back to your accounts page. Here, you need to select your clients by ticking the boxes on the left of their names, and then use the Send Organizer button in the menu that appeared above your list. The remaining steps, well, they're all the same as before. The last way you would send out organizers is by doing it automatically. Now, we talk about this in detail in our workflow webinar. So if you have not watched it, I would strongly recommend that you do so for a deep dive. So for now, since we didn't want to get off on a tangent here, I'm just going to give you the practical steps. First, go ahead and open a pipeline's settings. You can do this by going to the Pipelines tab in the Firm Templates page. Once you're there, scroll down to your stages and use the Edit Automations button, and then click on Add Automations. You'll see a list of possible automation types, but you'll want to select the Create Organizer one. All that's left is to select the template, enable reminders if necessary, and click Save. Now at this point, all your clients who would reach this stage in the pipeline would automatically receive the organizer, and it would also be linked to their jobs. This is the most common way that firms send out organizers, so we recommend that you do the same. Now that covers the different ways you can send them out. Now we will take some time now to go over everything you can do once you send out an organizer. To interact with them, you will of course need to find them first. They're all organized inside your client's accounts. So I'll open one up and I will go to their organizers tabs. You'll see a list of all the organizers you sent to that client, as well as their statuses and their progress. You can open them by clicking on their names, and you can then go over all their answers. Now, on top of that, you can mark them as reviewed if necessary. Besides giving you a way of keeping track with your review progress, it also prevents the client from making any further changes to the answers that you have marked as reviewed. There's also a more convenient way to stop your clients from making any changes after they submit the organizers. You can seal them either manually by using the option here after clicking on these three dots, or you can set them automatically sealed upon submission in the organizer template setting. You still have other common functions like printing, exporting, archiving, and more, but the important one is the fact that you can change the answers. This means you can make changes or corrections to answers, or even fill it out fully on behalf of a client if you want to. Your team members will only be able to do this if you give them the necessary permissions. And even then, you'll still be able to see if someone made any changes by opening the audit trail. Now, other than going over your client's answers, You generally won't have much work to do with the organizers after you send them out, but it is still important to know you do have these functions available to you. You'll get notifications about them being submitted by your clients, so you won't need to track their status manually either. Then being submitted is also important for your workflows, since they can lead to jobs moving from one stage to the next. You can consider it a milestone, for example, in your process, which would trigger this particular move, which in turn would cause the automations in the next stage to trigger as well. So if you set up the automatic tag updating like we discussed earlier, you'll have even more flexibility with your pipeline automations, but we'll talk about automations in another webinar. We won't pile that onto you today. So let's take one final break here. Please, folks, send us any questions in the Q&A. And once we're back, we're going to wrap up the webinar. We're just going to recap everything that we went through today, but I did want to give you some time here to get your questions in. So get those in. I'm going to pause for a moment, and I will be right back with you to close out today's webinar. All right, everybody. So let's get things wrapped up for today, and let's do a little recap on everything that we talked about today. We started today's webinar by explaining what our organizers are, and we showed you how they look from your client's perspective. After that small little showcase, we went to the firm portal and copied a template. And remember, both the library and marketplace have many pre-made templates that you can just jump in and start using. Once we opened the one that we copied, we started talking about the basic layout and the question types that you can add. We then followed this up by talking about the more advanced functions, which included making questions required, automatically updating tags, conditional logic, and more. After going over all of that, we talked about the ways to send out your organizers, with the most common one being through your pipelines. And then we finished things off by talking about the ways you will interact with your organizers. Now, I'm sure that all of you who are new to TaxDome managed to learn quite a bit about the organizers today. And for those of you that have been using TaxDome for some time and wanted to improve your knowledge, well, I certainly hope the webinar showed you a couple of new tricks and helped you become more confident in your usage of the organizers. Now, of course, if you would like to learn more, please visit our TaxDome Academy, which has courses on a wide range of topics, including organizers. So it's the best way to learn more about TaxDome's features and all that we can do to help your business. For any smaller questions that you might have, well, you can always visit the Help Center or feel free to reach out to our team. Well, that is all for today, folks. Thank you for hanging in there. We covered quite a bit today, but now we have reached the end of our webinar. So I would just like to take one more moment to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Hope to see you again on another one very soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.